So we're going over basic pre-production, which is the first step in making a movie. You have pre-production, then you have production, and you have post-production. Pre-production is where you're going to come together with your entire crew and cast and decide what needs to be done by who, when. The key to good pre-production is scheduling. You should have at least twice as much pre-production as you do actually production. So if you're shooting for a week, you need to do pre-production for at least 2 weeks. Almost everything that you need to know about pre-production can be summed up in this little inverse triangle here. These are the 3 steps: collaboration, pre-visualization, and then execution. You're going to do each one of these 3 steps with every single department head for every single scene in your script. So we're going to go over all the different department heads and how you would determine what you need to do with each person. And you need to set a schedule. Like if you know that you have 20 scenes in your script, you're going to shoot it in a week. You have 2 weeks of pre-production. You need to be getting through 10 scenes every week with every single one of your department heads and going over all the stuff. So you can do that in large, big collective meetings. You need to be doing each one of these 3 steps with each department head for each scene in the time allotted for however long your schedule is. Collaboration is going to be going through the scene and talking about creatively, how we're gonna make this together. What color we want the grade to look like, if we want this light to be hard or soft, if we want his performance to be really emotive or kind of subdued, if we want him to be wearing a t-shirt or a button-up. Everything that happens in that scene with every single department head needs to get talked about and needs to be discussed so that you know before you get to set on the day what's going to be done and what you need to get there. That's part of execution. So collaboration, like I said, is discussing all the different aspects. Pre-visualization is going through all the different options. If you were like, look, I don't know if I want him to be in a t-shirt or in a button-up. So let's get both of them, put them on him, and let me look at it. That's your previs step. So you might have 3 meetings set up with your production designer. In the collaboration stage, you're going to be talking about, for a specific scene, what you want him, what you want him to be wearing, all the different options that you might think of. In your previs stage, you're going to actually start putting those on your actors, seeing what those look like in this scenario. If he's running or something, you might film with the camera, him running, do a screen test of some of the costumes and stuff. And then an execution is whenever you're going to organize, you're going to finalize your decision. You're going to say, I want this one in this scene, I want this one in that scene. You're going to organize all those and have those ready to go by the date that you're going to shoot on. So collaboration is being creative about it. Previs is making your decisions on what you want to use, and execution is figuring out how you're going to use that. So let's go through every single department and talk about what everyone's role is. Yes, Kai.
Okay, so for just those 3 meetings, does it just have to be those 3 meetings, or could be as many?
Well, you might have 5 meetings just to talk about collaboration. If you get to the meeting and you're like, look, I don't have any idea what I want the cinematography to look like. If I want it to be hard or soft, or if I want it to be cool or warm. I don't know what movies I want it to look like. So you might get together with your cinematographer and be like, let's go and watch together. That's part of your pre-production. Let's go and watch together these movies and talk about, I really like the angle of this specific shot in this movie. Let's write that down and make sure that we use that. That's collaboration. It's figuring out what you're going to do together. So this might be 10 different meetings in the collaboration stage, but you need to know, if I'm going to shoot in by March 1st, and we're going to shoot for a month, then I need at least 2 months of pre-production. So I'm going to be doing previs in February, and I'm going to be doing collaboration in January. So I know we need to be getting previs stuff done with cinematography in February. So we got to make sure we watch all those movies before the end of the month. So that when we allot an entire month for previs, and we allot like the entire month of March, because really, this isn't even March. We're going to start shooting in what's after March, April. We're going to like start shooting on April 1st. So all of March, we're going to go through and make sure that we have everything purchased and washed and ironed, or disheveled if it's supposed to be wrinkled in the scene, or we're going to be putting all that stuff in place. So yeah, those are the 3 steps. You're going to do each one of those 3 steps with each one of your department heads. The director or the executive producer, every single one of the ones that are in all caps, that's your department head. You need to know what each one of those people is responsible for. This is like a pretty well fleshed out medium-sized set and crew. For most crews, you're going to have less than this. So like for what y'all are producing, you have significantly less than this. For a lot of crews, like huge, big budget movies are going to have like 3 times this crew, if not more, because they're going to have like under director of photography is camera operator. A big like $60 million crew is going to have like 6 different camera operators. So this can get pretty big exponentially. But for y'all, you need to know what each department head does, which is the ones in all caps. But you absolutely, for any set, bare minimum, you have to have all of the ones with asterisks by them. You need to have and each one with an asterisk by it has to be its own. You need to have an editor, and that person doesn't have any other job. They're just the editor. You need to have a production designer. They don't do any other job. They just do production design, so that they can focus totally and completely on their one job, doing it well and keeping it organized, so that your production can move smoothly and quickly. So your director or your executive producer, depending on where you are in time and locale, those positions are kind of interchangeable as to like who is the big head honcho. We talked about in the class before, like David O. Selznick was a really popular producer who made things like Rebecca and Gone with the Wind. Alfred Hitchcock was a director who worked underneath Selznick and became one of the very first auteur filmmakers. Y'all remember we talked about all this.
Very first, what kind of filmmakers?
Auteur is an auteur filmmaker is someone who you can distinctly identify. Oh yeah, that's a J.J. Abrams movie. That's a Quentin Tarantino movie. I don't even have to see the name because I know the look and the feel of that kind of movie. That's a Wes Anderson movie. That's auteurism. Back in the day, but like before, like the 50s, producers, executive producers, largely had much more creative control. And so you would identify like a Selznick movie. Oh, that's a David O. Selznick movie. Even though David O. Selznick is not the director, he's the producer. Alfred Hitchcock was one of the very first auteur filmmakers who started making that shift from executive producers being the person with creative control to the director being the person with creative control. Today, widely, the director is going to be the person with the most say on your set. Yeah. Right. Well, and that's a really great example that's a really great example of a distinction between what a director and a producer is. They announced all the new Star Wars movies before they had directors for them. So a producer makes projects, a director makes movies. So a producer is going to be the person who's like, oh, I really like this script. I want to make this into a movie. Let me find a director to make it. A director is the person who's going to be like, oh, I like this script. Let me figure out the shots that are going to be in it. Let me cast the actors who I want to be in it. All those kind of decisions are going to be made primarily. Today we have a very auteur-centric cinematic system. So many more of our filmmakers are auteur filmmakers and not producers. So typically, like back in the day, you would be like, your producers would be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make Star Wars and we're gonna make it with Clark Gable and Betty Wallace, and we'll find a director who will direct both of those actors. But today, you wouldn't dream, like a studio wouldn't announce actors before they have hired a director, because it would be the director's choice of who acted in the movie. So, anyways, Your director is typically going to be your head honcho on set, or your executive producer. And then your unit production manager, the director is in control of the entire creative side of the film. The unit production manager is in control of the entire logistical side of the film. So this is like the holy trifecta of movie making. The director is the person who controls the creative aspects of the film. The unit production manager is the person who controls all the logistical aspects of the film. And then the executive producer is the person who funds the effort. Without any one of those positions, you can't make a movie. We, in our class, have typically focused on assistant directors because your unit production manager and your assistant director are kind of the same thing. The biggest distinction is that an assistant director is in charge of what happens on set, and a unit production manager is in charge of what happens across the whole movie. So a unit production manager might not be on set one day, whereas an assistant director is always going to be on set. The assistant director will be on set working on like the scene that we're filming that day, but the UPM might be, setting up like next week we're moving to Dallas to shoot on a set there, and so he's in Dallas right now setting all that up and figuring out, so your UPM is the person who's going to be logistically handling like the money and who gets their paychecks and when, who's setting up the schedule, all that kind of logistical, not fun stuff. So. Underneath your unit production manager, so your unit production manager is going to be over every single other department in your movie. Your assistant director is over every other department. Whenever you're on set, the assistant director will tell the cinematographer, the director of photography, hey, I need that done by this specific time. So in a way, like they are kind of in control of them, but the assistant director really is kind of on a level playing field with all the other department heads. Their department is just keeping the production on schedule. And so all of the other department heads kind of report to them and follow what they say. But a good assistant director would never, tell another department head how to run their department. So is your hand up, Kai?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So your assistant director is going to be in charge of everything that happens on set. Your unit production manager is going to be in charge of everything that happens in your entire production. On set, your first AD is going to keep people on schedule. They're going to get your actors whenever you need them. They're going to keep everybody calm and having fun, but also maintaining a really professional environment. And most importantly, the first assistant director is in charge of safety on set. So anything that needs to happen that might be dangerous, the first assistant director is going to be there. They're going to have like set medics or stunt coordinators in place. They're going to have all different kinds of personnel and have procedures in place to make sure that the set is as safe of an environment, as possible. Underneath the first assistant director is the second assistant director. Is the second assistant director. They are going to be the person who's predominantly in charge of like scheduling. Like you'll get a call sheet every day. They'll like email you your call sheet for the next day, and that will tell you what time you need to be there, when we're shooting what shots, what our schedule is going to be, what your call time is. So like our first shot might not be until noon, but our call time might be 8 o'clock. So you got to know what time you're supposed to be on set. The second assistant director is the person who's going to be in charge of getting call sheets out and scheduling all the stuff. And then, real confusingly, underneath the second assistant director is the second assistant director. Yeah, it's your AD is going to be your AD. Where's the AD? If you're on set, you would ask. Your second AD is going to be your second. So where's, did you see where the second went? You might ask somebody because that's what you would refer to them as. And then you have your second, and then your second, third, your third second, and then your fourth second. Because it's an important distinction. It's weird. Third ADs are going to be lower than a seconds, but your seconds are all on the same level. So like the second AD is underneath the first AD, but the second is just another second AD. They're not like underneath that level. So you have a whole army of seconds. No, I understand.
But
the thirds are going to be underneath them. And then finally, and that'll go for a while. Like you might have like third AD, fourth AD, fifth AD, sixth AD. Typically, people aren't going to be keeping track of where's the sixth AD. Like that doesn't make any sense. But and then finally, at the very bottom of the total pool, you have production assistants, and production assistants are going to do anything anyone tells them to do. They are the hands to do whatever needs to get done. So yeah, the people in charge of keeping the production smooth flowing and moving are your assistant directors. They are going to be in charge of logistics on set. So if the director is like he's got a little bit of fake blood on his mouth because he got punched and it dripped on his shirt, can we get him a new shirt or something? The AD would be on set. The AD never leaves set. The AD would be on set. They'd be like, oh yeah, for sure. And then they'd call their second, and they'd have the second go out. Like if this is the set that we're shooting on, then out there, the G&E would have set up a monitor where the director, like the cinematographer, will be. The sound mixer will have a station out there. A G&E will have a grip and electric will have a space where they've staged all of their equipment and stuff out there. But then like the trailers were like hair and makeup and like the cast craft service are, like those might be in trailers and tents in the parking lot. And so because I'm here with the actors as the director and I'm talking, I'm like, oh, he got some blood on his shirt. Can we get a clean shirt for him? So the AD out there would walkie-talkie the second and be like, hey, grab them a new shirt. So they would go down to costume design and we'd get them a new shirt. They'd bring it back up. So the whole thing functions on the back of the assistant directors. The UPM is in charge of like everything, like the production office. I wrote that on there just to illustrate the level of minutia that the UPM is going to be dealing with on a regular basis, like the accountants and business managers and like all like the clerical work. That's what the UPM is. But the UPM also is going to be in charge of like hiring the first assistant director and the editor and VFX supervisor. Hiring and firing is a big part of UPM anyways. So that's your assistant director. And then underneath your UPM and your assistant director are going to be all of your different crews that are working on set. You're going to have your director of photography who is in control of all of the look of the movie. So all of the look of the lighting, the director of photography is going to tell people, like the production designer, in those collaboration stages, we all are talking about, oh, I want him to wear a red shirt. Well, the director of photography needs to be involved in those conversations because a red shirt is going to be lit differently under different lighting conditions than like a blue shirt will be, or a white shirt. Like if it's going to be a white shirt, the director of photography might be like, can we make it like beige? Like white is going to be terrible for the light. And so then, you have all those kind of conversations. So the director of photography would be kind of, like I said, over production design, but not really. All of these department heads are relatively equal at this point. But the director of photography is going to be in charge of all the lighting, and that oftentimes involves other departments as well. Everything that goes into lighting is the camera and the lights, obviously. So the director of photography is going to be in charge of the camera department, which is the camera operator and all the assistant cameras. You're going to have camera operator who is always at the camera at all times. They're in control of building the rig whenever they get to the set that day. They're in control, and like you're going to put the camera on a dolly typically. We don't use like tripods and stuff. Usually you would use a camera on a dolly, and so the camera operator is going to be on the dolly like at all times with the camera. Their first AC is almost always going to be with them, and they would send like their second AC, that's assistant camera, second, third, fourth, fifth AC, they would send to like go get a new lens or to go get a battery or to like swap out the card, bring this card to the DMT, that kind of stuff you would have your assistants do if you were the camera operator. So that falls directly underneath the director of photography. The electric department falls underneath the director of photography, and the gaffer is going to be in charge of the electric department. That's super scary. Like I know stories of people who have like died because they plugged in a light and like it was on, and like the charge like shocked them and killed them. We deal very frequently with like 100,000 watt lights very, very bright lights sometimes, which draw a lot of electricity and power. And like if you walked into this room and we had four 10Ks, four 10,000 watt lights that we had to plug in this room, where would you plug those in at? How do you know that the breaker is not going to trip if you plug them all in on that wall or this wall? How do you know that this building can even handle that amount of wattage? So your electrical department and your gaffer who's in charge of your electrical department is going to have all that kind of information. That's what I'm saying. Like you would have all these people. If you don't have a gaffer on your set, your director of photography needs to know all that information. They need to know if we bring lights into this room, if we're going to be able to power all those lights. That's part of what a director of photography is in charge of. Typically, they relegate that responsibility to their gaffer, who would be in charge of their electrical department. The gaffer's first assistant. Basically, every department, a first AD has a second AD. Director of photography has a camera operator, which has a first AC. Gaffer has a best boy, which is like assistant gaffer. And then after that, they have like electricians and lighting technicians. There's a lot of different stuff that goes into electric, but they're going to be primarily responsible for like the transportation of lights, getting lights on set, striking those lights, plugging them in, running power cables, tying those power cables down, all that kind of stuff. And then grip is mounting lighting equipment. So like we had the C-stands in here where we put the diffusion into the C-stand and everything. That's all grip work. Grips are going to put diffusion up. They're going to put scrims, like make lights darker. Typically, whenever you're working with Fresnel lights, they have like a round face on the front, and there's a space in between where the lens of the Fresnel light is, and where like the barn doors, the things that are on the sides of the light, are mounted. There's a space in there where you can put discs that are like chicken wire, essentially really dense chicken wire. And whenever you put that disc in there, it's going to make this light darker. Putting those discs in, that can be hot because those lights get really hot. And so G&E is always going to have like gloves on and is going to have ways to combat the heat. And they're always going to have like clothespins clipped to them. They're always going to be using clothespins to mount that kind of stuff. C-47s is what you would call a clothespin on set. Don't ask me why we make up stupid names for things. Or bullets. But anyways. Predominantly, most of the people that are going to be on your set whenever you're shooting are going to be G&E. They're going to be your grips and your electricians working for the camera department. Then we have our next department head is going to be our smallest department, but one of our most important. This is the only single person department on set, and that is script supervisor. Script supervisor is going to be in charge of continuity. So whenever you're talking about like your actors blocking, if you're talking about where the camera is going to be and where the actors are going to be in relation to that, the script supervisor might tell you, oh, well, you know that you're crossing the line when you do that. Or, script supervisors very often are editors and will be in charge of editing because they think like that. They think like an editor would. And so a script supervisor will tell you things like, especially in pre-production, well, you want that person to grab that. Do we have to have the cup way over there? Because then they're going to have to reach, and that's going to be awkward for the camera. If we take the cup and we put it here, then they can just grab it like that. And so you'll be like, yeah, sure, that doesn't matter. I don't care. The script supervisor is going to be thinking about that kind of stuff that a director might not be. And on set, a script supervisor is hugely important because they will be taking notes of continuity and will be following the script. So if an actor says a line somewhat differently, the script supervisor will make a note of that. Like in the first take, the actor says it a little differently than it was in the book. The script supervisor will tell the director, hey, they said that line not the way it's written. And the director would be like, yeah, that's fine, I liked it. So they would write it down and they would have the actor repeat it that same way each take, so that all of those takes will cut together. Once you get in the editing room, has anybody ever edited anything? Yeah. So once you start editing things, you're going to see, oh gosh, he like turns around in this take at one time and he turns around. He's like, if the action is he's going to walk, turn around and be like, oh yeah, I'll see you later. And we get that from 3 different takes. but we get that from 3 different angles. But in the first angle, he turns around here, and in the second angle, he turns around here, and in the third angle, he turns around, but he turns around this way. Then once you start cutting those together, you're going to be like, why is it's all over the place? And because he turned the wrong way in this one, I can't cut from this one to that one. Those are the kind of things that a script supervisor would be taking note of. Oh, he turned around the wrong way in this scene. That's a continuity error. Or, oh, he said his line differently. That's a continuity error. He picked up his glass with his right hand. He took off his glasses on this specific line. Script supervisor is going to be making note of all that kind of action. They're very detail oriented. Then you have, I never went over, key grip is the person who's in charge of the grip department. That's easy. Then you have your sound mixer and your boom operator. Your sound mixer typically is going to set up a whole station like with a board on like really big sets. They're going to have like a whole station with like a board set up somewhere quiet where they can hear. And then they'll run mics from that station to where the boom operator is on set. The boom operator is going to be trying to get the microphone as close to the actors' mouths as they can without being in frame. The sound mixer and boom operator are really, like, you typically want those to be two different people so that you have one person who's really focusing on audio integrity and another person who's really focusing on getting that mic as close as they possibly can. So your sound mixer, especially in pre-production, you want to have them on in your meetings to talk about. You might like have your storyboards and be like, yeah, we have this big wide shot where he's gonna like scream. He's gonna be like, how dare you do this thing? The sound mixer is gonna be the guy who's like, yeah, but there's no way we're gonna be able to get a microphone close enough to him, and we don't have any lavalier mics to like hide under his shirt. So how are we gonna mic this? And so now you as a director, you're like, oh, I don't know, figure it out. And so that's their job, is to figure it out or to tell you that it can't be done. But that's why like all of these department heads knowing what they all do and having them all part of these conversations is so important, because they're going to be thinking, and why you need just one person assigned to being this one thing, so that they're thinking about all the different details about, okay, well, how is this going to look for continuity? How is that going to look on camera? These like pinstripe is going to moire on a digital camera. We can't use pinstripes in the, all those little kind of details. Anyways, so sound mixer is going to be in charge of sound. Production designer is going to be in charge of, if the director of photography is in charge of all the lighting, the way that everything looks, the production designer is in charge of everything that you see, all the objects, the set, the liquid that's in the glass that he's drinking, what his costume looks like, how his hair is going to be done, what color things are, all that kind of stuff, set and costume and all that falls under the responsibility of the production designer. The production designer's main like assistant person is the art director. That's the person that's going to accomplish the will of the production designer on set. And then you have several departments underneath production designer. You have many more than, for all of these, like you have more departments underneath these than I can even begin to specify in a limited amount of time and space. But you have basic departments that are underneath the production designer: costume designer, costume supervisors. Like the costume designer is the person who's gonna, like the production designer says, okay, he wants a red shirt that looks like it's from the 1940s in this scene. So I'm thinking, how about, I know this specific movie, look in this scene and look at this guy's shirt. I like that. Go find me something like that. And so the costume supervisor will be the person like goes and shops for that kind of thing. They have people like their title is shopper. Like they literally just go and buy things for different departments. And so like a costume supervisor would be the person who, once that got on set, like he got punched and a little bit of fake blood dripped on his shirt. So the costume supervisor is the person who, like the director didn't notice that. So the costume supervisor tells the second or the first AD, hey, some blood drip, that's going to be a continuity error. And they're like, oh, wait, director, some blood dripped on there. Do you want a new shirt? And they'll be like, yes, give me one. And the costume designer, the costume supervisor, having seen that the blood dripped, already has a shirt ready. So that if the director says yes, they've got it to go. Set costumers are the people who would actually be dressing your actors and actresses, and then hair and makeup are the people who do, hair and makeup. I'm gonna check this real quick. I think maybe I got a phone call. Hold on, which is gonna mess up this recording. No, we're good. Okay, let's put that on airplane mode just in case.
I'm sorry, what?
None of your business. Then you have your set designers. Those are the people that are going to be in charge of, even if it's not like a set. Like if we were shooting in this room, we didn't build a set here, but this is our set, and so they would be in charge of like what color these chairs are, exactly where they're stacked. They would be in charge of like getting those chairs bought and put in place. They would have all kind of production design, production assistants who would help them do all that kind of stuff. Did you
Does
something?
like everyone have access to some version of the film as it's being made, so that they can kind of like keep track of like what's happening?
Kind of. We'll talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
And then location manager is going to be the person. So like the location manager is different from the set designer or the set dresser or coordinator, because the set designer has control over what's happening on set. The location manager, remember I said we have trailers and tents and stuff in the parking lot? The location manager is the person deciding where those tents are going to be. Where there's a food truck that came for craft services, where are they going to plug in? Are they going to, do they need electricity? Are they going to provide their own stuff? That's the location manager is going to be the person in charge of all of the location and not just like what's happening on set. And then you have like transportation managers. Those are the people who like drive the trucks and stuff like that. So, and then you have special effects supervisor who's going to work very closely with like hair and makeup. Hair and makeup are going to be the people who like if you have like monsters like orcs in Lord of the Rings, hair and makeup are going to be the people who put the stuff on them. But your special effects supervisor is going to be the person who's figuring out, okay, do we want to use latex or some other kind of material to make these masks out of? What's going to look the most realistic? How should they perform and things like that? Underneath your special effects supervisor is going to be people like your stunt coordinator and your set medic. The difference between a special effect and a visual effect is special effects happen in reality and visual effects happen afterwards. Like, anything CGI, that's a visual effect. But the orcs in Lord of the Rings, that's a special effect because they did it on set, at least for Lord of the Rings and not The Hobbit, which are vastly more inferior movies. Then we have craft services is on set. That's going to be the people who like have food there. Oftentimes, you're going to work like 10, 16, 20-hour days. You're going to work really long, crazy hours. You'll be like your call time will be like 4 o'clock in the morning or something stupid. And so if you work a certain amount of time, like if you work like 15 hours, you have to provide 2 meals for your crew in that time. Those are like union rules. All of these different departments have all different unions. And for the major production studios to hire and use professionally trained people, they're going to use these union job people, and they're going to have to abide by the rules of those unions. And so part of the rules of the union is if you work for like 15 hours, you have to provide 2 meals for your crew, and craft services would be the people who provide those kind of meals. Then you have your editor. A lot of editors will be on set. Sometimes, maybe not all the time, but a lot of editors will either be on set or will have like one of their assistants, an assistant editor, on set to like see what's happening so that they know like once they get in the editing room, they're not just going into this footage blind. But one of the biggest representations of the editor on set is the DMT, or the data management technician. That's going to be the person who stores all the footage, copies it, and sends it to where they need to go. And so like if we're shooting on set and I'm the camera operator and I see that this card is getting full, I'm going to tell one of my assistants, hey, you'll get me a new card because this one's filling up. They bring me a new card. I swap it out. You use color tape, the marking tape that we have in here frequently. You put red on a card that has footage on it so that we know don't format it. And you put green on a card that's okay to be formatted. And so I would put red tape on that because that has footage on it. I would give it to my assistant. They would bring it to the DMT, who would then put that onto their computer that they have on set, and they have like 4 different drives, and so this is the backup drive, this is where we're storing all the footage, this is the one that needs to go to the editor, this is the one that needs to go to the colorist, this is the one for dailies, and so they're going to be the person who like makes all those copies and starts interpolating all that footage. Sometimes the way that these cameras write footage can't be easily read by a computer, so you have to make transcodes of that kind of footage. A DMT will do that on set. And we'll do things like they'll make full res transcodes on set and like low res transcodes that'll get done quicker so that we can watch those at the end of the day. And that's typically how we're going to all keep track of what the film looks like together. Is either most typically it's at the beginning of the day, but a lot of times it's at the end of the day. You'll watch like dailies from the day that day, or in the morning you'll watch dailies from the day before. And dailies are all the takes. You just watch all the footage that we got. Usually all the department heads will go in like a little room with a screen, and they'll watch all the dailies. And that's where you keep track of, like, if we're at this location for 4 days and we shot all the first day and we start looking in the dailies and we're seeing, oh, this did a weird thing. We're going to have to reshoot that. We do that here while we have the location instead of having to rebook this location and get this whole crew here again like 4 months down the line whenever we realize, oh no, we made a mistake. So you watch dailies every day typically. And your DMT is going to be in charge of putting those dailies together. But an editor is going to like start getting that footage like the day that you're shooting. The moment you like dump your first card, the DMT is going to put that on a drive, and like they might have an assistant editor on set who they give that drive to, and they drive it to wherever the editor is. Or the editor might be on set and they might start actually like cutting the footage together, syncing the sound. And now that they're like cutting it together loosely, like the day after we shot this stuff, you see, oh no, this footage doesn't work together. They need to reshoot this. He crossed the line and nobody realized, so it doesn't look right. We need to reshoot this. So having your editor, you don't just store up all your footage and then go do post-production later. You start editing it together roughly now while we're on set so that we can start seeing it. Yeah, Major.
When you say syncing the sound, you have to like match up the sound exactly?
Right. That's why we use the slate. We have the slate there, and we always put the slate in and then hit record so that the very first frame of every clip is the slate that says what shot this is, 1 alpha, 1 bit bravo, and what take this is. So on the camera, I can identify, okay, this is 1 bravo, take 3. And then we say it, 1 bravo, take 3, marker. So that on the sound, I can listen to the sound and say, okay, this is 1 bravo, take 3. I put both of those files together, and I skip through the footage to the point where the camera clap, they touch, the sticks, they touch on the slate. And then I go to the point in the audio where I first hear the sound of that clap. And I put those together, and that'll have really high quality sound that was recorded separately from the camera, and it'll put that in sync with their lips and like any action that happens in the scene. Exactly. That's why we clap the slate, is so that we can sync that footage. Yeah.
Do the colors that go along the top of the marker have anything to do with the color aesthetic?
Typically, those are going to be like specific shades of specific color. And so if I wanted to color balance this correctly, I could like sample just that shade and like match it to a reference shade that I have here to know that I have exactly the color that I want. But color is a whole art in and of itself and is kind of really abstract. What is blue? It just depends on what environment you're in. Are these chairs, like some people might see them as more blue and some people might see them as more green. And so color is an awfully more subjective thing than you would think it is. But yeah, those are typically there. So technically you can match that to a reference color. So yeah, that's your editor. The biggest representation of your editor on set is going to be your DMT. That's who you're going to be bringing all your footage to. But oftentimes, like on a small set like y'all are going to be shooting on typically, your editor and your DMT are going to be the same person. Then you have the VFX Supervisor, who is going to do all of your like computer graphics and After Effects work. We did a project last semester, a while ago, with Lucas, where we like cloned him and he played 2 different versions of himself, and that's a VFX effect. That's a visual effect. And so in our pre-production meetings, we would be talking about, okay, how are we going to do this? How do I need to shoot it on set? And the VFX supervisor would walk us through and would be on set with us and be like, oh, no, you can't put that light there because that's going to mess it up whenever I have to cut it in half in After Effects and blah, blah, blah. Or like put this tracking thing on his shirt so that I can track that with the software later. So your VFX supervisor is going to be on set and in all your pre-production meetings to talk about all of that. So that's pretty much every department head. Pretty much, yes.
Does the sound mixer ever work with like sound effects where they'll actually like create their own
Not
sound?
typically. You're gonna have separate mixers. This is gonna be like your on-set sound
If you
mixer.
want to make like the sound of snow or whatever.
Right. That's gonna be a post-production process called like Foley, where you create almost all of those sound effects originally. If you go on YouTube, like you look up like Foley artists, it's really fascinating to watch some of the stuff that they do to make those sounds. But that's a total post-production process that those people aren't going to be on set typically. All this crew that you're looking at is typically the people that are only going to be on set. We're not even talking about like pre-production storyboard artists or shoppers or anything like that. We're not even talking about post-production Foley artists or sound mixers. This is just production stuff. But you're doing pre-production to know what you need to do during production. So you want to be thinking about all your production department heads and how they're going to play out. Yeah.
So is execution on that chart, is that production?
No. So you have collaboration. That's where you're like talking with one another and you're saying, oh, do we want it to be red or do we want it to be blue? I don't know. Then you have previs, which is where you grab like a red and a blue shirt and you look at both of them and you're like, no, I think I like the blue better. Let's use that one. And so then execution is like going and getting that shirt dry cleaned or whatever and ready in like the van, organizing, or like in my house, like if you're doing a really small set, organizing that, like putting it, maybe you put all the costumes in a specific bag for a specific day and you write the date on it. That's getting it ready, that's staging it to go in and do actual production. That's what execution is just locking in all those decisions and then getting on set and actually doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
What about like the departments for like making, like a music composer?
Yeah, that's all post-production stuff. You would talk about a lot of that stuff in pre-production, but you have time, I guess. You would start having those conversations for sure, but that's not going to be totally pressing to have immediately for production. It would be an aspect of your pre-production that you would definitely want to think about and start talking about. But
Like even for making a original score, like from John Williams or
right. Typically, what's going to happen with something like that is they're going to shoot the scene and they're going to cut it together, and then they're going to give it to John Williams, and John Williams is going to make the score to it. Usually, very rarely do you have like the original music that you're composing before you actually start shooting. That's almost entirely a post-production process. Paul.
Never mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless it's like a musical, that'd be different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whenever you're building the entire movie around the music itself, then yeah, for sure that would be different. And a lot of directors will start talking about music. Will like use music, the original music in their creative process. But typically, it's going to be something that's done in post production. So, all right. So, whenever you have pre-production meetings, you want to meet with every department head and start talking about how every single scene is gonna go. Typically, you want to get a script and highlight every noun. That's the rule of thumb. Highlight every noun in the script. That's a person, a place, or a thing. because every noun has to be accounted for. Who is this person? Who are they casting them as? What are they wearing? What do they sound like? What is do they have an accent? Do they not have an accent? Do they walk with a limp? Do they do, you have to make all those kind of creative decisions for every single thing. He picks up an apple. What kind of apple? Is it a grandma apple? Is it a green apple? Is it a yellow apple? Does it have a bite out of it? Is it an old apple? Is it kind of like that? And that's why they say that every decision in a film is intentional. Every decision in a film is made specifically for a reason. Nothing is just like, oh, I don't know, make it a yellow one. Because you're going to think about it. You're going to put a lot of thought into you're making a decision. Why a yellow apple instead of a green apple? As you're making these films, you want to be consciously choosing what you're doing for good reasons. So, any other questions? So, does somebody say so?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like the union? Is that like the legal processes?
A union is going to be a group of workers who have decided we don't want to be treated that way. We want to be treated a specific way. Typically, unions are a good thing because they protect the workers and make sure that they get equitable pay. Otherwise, a whole bunch of these workers, like if you have like a camera operators union, the cinematography union, I can't remember. There's like 3 of them. I can't remember what any of them are called. You have like all your camera operators are part of a union, and they start realizing, look, we're not getting paid nearly what everybody else is getting paid, and that's not fair. So we're not going to work. We're all going to decide together not to work until we get equitable pay. So by banding together and deciding to work as a union of people, to act as a union of people, you can make big corporations treat you more equitably. So yeah, like craft services, you would have these big corporations who are working people for 15 hours. They're on set in the middle of Alaska. You can't get to a restaurant in the middle of Alaska, and we didn't get any lunch break. And so we're like passing out, dying. Like, you have to give us a lunch. And they're like, yeah, but no, we don't. Okay, well then we're not going to work until you give us one. And so that happened at some point in the past. Your union fought for equitable or fair treatment, and if you don't get it, you don't work. And so the bigger corporations said, okay, well, we have to make this movie, so we'll provide you a lunch if you work for a certain amount of hours. And so all of these unions have negotiated contracts with these big production companies to get fair treatment. But you don't get to worry about any of that because you're not in a union. You typically have to work. You have to work a lot of hours to get into a union, to like qualify to be eligible to get in a union, and then you have to pay dues to that union. You have to pay money to like be a part of the union, and it's better for you and it's better for the group because y'all get treated more fairly. But it's difficult to get into unions for sure. So you're going to work a lot of time not in a union. That was the big hurdle that like I never got over while I was in California. I never got into a union just because you have to have like 1,000 hours and you have to keep track of them all and make sure that you have proof that I worked 1,000 hours. And you have to pay like $3,000 or something. It's crazy. It's not easy to get into a union, but once you do, the union has an incentive to like help you get jobs. And so you get a lot more jobs and you get a lot better jobs because they're union jobs. So, any other questions? So yeah, every single one of you, if you are making a movie, you should have a director, a UPM, who is often just going to be your assistant director, an editor, a director of photography, a cinematographer, a script supervisor, a sound mixer, and a production designer. 7 different roles. And you need to have a person dedicated to each one of those. You need to fill all of those different positions. Even if you have a person in that position that isn't terribly familiar, like I've never done production design in my life, But if I was in the position of a production designer, I know I need to start thinking about like, oh, well, what does this look like, and what do they wear, and what does the set look like? I need to be understanding. I need to be thinking about all those kind of things, and I only have to be thinking about those kind of things. And so I make sure that the quality of the production design is good. If you have people assigned to each one of those positions who really care about each one of those positions, you're typically going to have an easy time on set. Especially if you've done all kind of pre-production meetings and you've collaborated with them, you've given them the say, and you saw it as a blue shirt. I'm the director. I saw it as a blue shirt, and the production designer is but if it says the production designer says but if it was red, it was more interesting. It's going to be more dynamic because the background is going to be blue. If his shirt is blue, then he's just going to kind of blend in with it. And so as a director, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I do like that. And that's that collaboration stage. And so then I'm like, okay, bring me like 30 red shirts. I don't know what I want. I think like a button up. So bring me like 30 red button ups and let me see them. And so then you bring the actor in and you look at him and all the different shirts that they bought for him, or they'll take pictures with the actor. Like they'll go shopping with the actor. They'll take pictures. They'll send them all to you. You'll be like, oh yeah, I like these things. That's your previs. And then they're gonna buy them. They're gonna get them all organized and ready to go out for specific days of set, and that's your execution. Okay, if there are no further questions, then we're gonna do it. We have scripts here. I'm gonna assign each one of you to a position, and we're gonna each walk through the script and look at from each perspective, me as the director and all of you as specific crew members. We're gonna look at it and see what production we can get done, pre-production we can get done. So take a break, take 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and do that.